Hello, I'm Sue Hillis, a board member of Women in Politics, and we've launched the 2020 Ask Her campaign as part of an effort to encourage women to consider running for office in an upcoming election at any level of government. This campaign's primary goal is to support all women who would like to become involved with politics by sharing the experiences, perspectives, and advice of other women who've already entered this arena. We'll hear from women who previously served in public office, from current elected officials, and women who ran in the past. All will offer their advice and experience to help other women to enter the race. Above all, we want to achieve the goal of having more women's voices at decision-making tables. And today we welcome Kate Graham and Flora. So welcome, Kate. So you've been involved with a few campaigns, and so what really inspired you? What was your first inkling that you wanted to enter the political arena?
Well, first off, thank you very much for hosting these conversations. I think it's so important, and I will say having a 3-month-old little girl in my arms, it's a good reminder of why seeing women in politics is so important. So thank you for what you're doing. For me, my decision to run came in 2018 after 10 years of working at the City of London. There were a couple of issues that I didn't feel were moving fast enough. One was about transportation. The city needed a lot of investment in our transit system. For me, it's a equity issue, it's a climate issue, and it required more support from Queen's Park. And the second thing was about mental health supports. We were seeing really concerning patterns in the city. And we, again, needed help from Queen's Park. So in that moment, it was one of those times where you have to ask yourself, how much do I care about this and what am I willing to do to see the kind of change that I want to see? And I decided that there was nothing that I wouldn't do. So I quit my job and I ran for office. Were central to my platform in that first campaign.
So how long did you think about it before you took it to commit?
I had been thinking about it coming up. Our MPP, Deb Matthews, had announced that she was not running again. But the tipping point for me was actually sitting in a council meeting. I can remember thinking about it, and it was specifically when the rapid transit issue is really blowing up in London, and knowing that because we didn't have provincial funding yet, we were seeing things really escalate. It was just becoming very divisive and very difficult to move forward on something that I thought was really needed in the city. And it was in one of those quiet moments, just watching it all unfold, when I thought, you know what, if there's something else I could do to make this happen, I'm going to do it. And so I'm going to quit and I'm going to run.
So did you have any expectations leading up to the campaign, and were any of those expectations met or not met? How did it go from the perspective of actually doing the campaign?
Well, I was running for a party that was absolutely tanking in the polls. So and a lot of people asked me if I was, nuts to be running at that time. But, for me, it was really about in the campaign wanting to make sure that certain perspectives were raised and certain issues were raised. I'm very in favor of public transit, and it was a very divisive issue. And I wanted to make sure there were candidates in the race who were going to speak as loudly as possible in favor of that. And so my expectation was less about winning and losing. It was more about wanting to push for some really important issues and conversations, and wanting to see other people get engaged in those issues as well. So that was my expectation going in, and that's what we did from beginning to end. And for me, even looking back on that first campaign, that was the most exciting part, was seeing other people step up to get involved because they were motivated to see change in our city.
And did anything really surprise you on the campaign trail? And I know you've been on a few, so whichever one you want to comment on, because I expect they were a little bit different.
Running for leader was different, but I would say in terms of the surprise, I'd say I'm kind of consistently surprised on both ends of the engagement spectrum. So on one end, I'm always surprised by the number of people who are totally disengaged, disillusioned, want nothing to do with politics. They don't see it as being important. They're quite angry, and they just feel really let down by politics. And so, on campaigns, you encounter a lot of people who are feeling that way. And it's a good reminder of why politics needs to change. But I would say I'm also always surprised on the other end of the spectrum where people are very, very committed. They will step forward and do extraordinary things in a volunteer capacity for a candidate or a party or an issue that they believe in. And so that's always been a really positive surprise too, is just to see the way that people really step up when given the opportunity to do so.
Can you tell us a bit about the barriers you faced as a woman in your campaign? I remember the story of the person at the door, and it was in London, I think, where the gentleman said, "We don't vote for women in this house." I remember that one very well. But then you also knocked on doors around the whole province when you were in the leadership campaign. So what particular barriers do you think you faced as a woman, aside from getting remarks like that at the door, I suppose?
Yeah. Well, I mean, there are definitely the overt expressions where you'll come across, sometimes it's on social media, sometimes it's to your face while door knocking, things that are just blatantly sexist. And it's always really shocking. And yeah, when that happens. But for me, the more significant barrier has been the way that people's expectations of women are different. So for example, when I first announced that I was running for leader, the first reference to me in the Toronto Star referred to me as, they misspelled my name and referred to me as a mother of 3. And at the time I was a mother of 0. And I also had other things that I could be described as. It mentioned nothing about any professional accomplishment or anything. It just said Kate Graham, mother of 3. And through the campaign, the kinds of questions that I would be asked were definitely different than men in the race. People would repeatedly ask me about whether or not I was qualified, despite, arguably having, I have a PhD in political science. I have more education and more time in politics than many people in office, including the current premier. I had lots of political experience and community experience that I thought was really valuable, but not everyone did. And the same question was not asked of men in the race who may have had similar or even less experience. And I think that's a really common experience that women have, is that the expectation around what we bring seems to be so much higher, and it includes more things. So it's our professional accomplishments, it's our education, but it's also things about how we parent, how we, our family relationships, anything goes. People would ask about anything and everything. And I think to a level that they don't when it's a male candidate.
Yes, we certainly saw that when Chrystia Freeland became the Minister of Finance as well, didn't we? People were certainly doing those, questioning her credentials much more than they have any other person that's been in that office.
And that's the tough part is, and I think, for I want to see as diverse of a political field as possible. And that includes in every way, including professionally, including age, including experience. And so when women are treated like they're not experienced enough, sometimes it can be easy to internalize that and think, oh, well, maybe I need to wait until I, am essentially have the resume of a lot of the traditional people we've seen in politics, which are older, white, affluent men, usually, in legal or business fields. And if your resume doesn't look like that, or your background doesn't look like that, then we think that we're not qualified. And we really need to rethink that. Like, qualified for public office to me means that you've got a really clear understanding about what it is that you want to change, and you're willing to do the work to see that happen. That's it. There's nothing more than that. And so for me, that's one of the more significant barriers that certainly I've faced, but I think that women face generally, is if we have this singular idea of what qualifies someone for public office, we're always going to see the same people in the role. So we need to really rethink how we use that term in politics.
And it's very interesting because I would venture to say that many women who do enter politics have had a lot of community advocacy experience or a lot of community involvement before. And there are things within that community involvement that then spur them on, or issues in the community that spur them on that they've been involved with. But I think it's interesting you're suggesting that it doesn't necessarily have to be any of those things. It just has to be the willingness, the passion, all of that goes along with it. You can make a difference, and you want to make a difference. Is there any other advice or guidance you would offer to women who are thinking about entering politics? Because I think that whole imposter syndrome, that whole I'm not good enough, I don't look like them, so how can I be involved in this? If you have any other advice you might want to give people who are thinking about it.
Well, for me, I think that's one of the toughest things that we need to crack through as a society, but also as women who are in politics or thinking about politics, is to really understand the value that we bring. So I want to see more moms in politics. I want to see more people who have lived experience with poverty. I want to see people who have seen life from many different angles. And so we need to start valuing the things about our experiences and our perspectives. So if you do not see people in politics who have had similar experiences or see life the way that you do, it means you need to run. It doesn't mean that you're not qualified. It doesn't mean you need to be older, richer, more connected, more educated, whatever. It means that we need your voice right now. So my main advice and really plea to anyone watching this is, if there are things that you want to see change and you are willing to do the work, you are ready to do this. And you will find that there are people who want to support you and help you to get there. So don't wait until you check off some imaginary list of qualifications that you may think that you need. What you need is a clear sense of what you want to change. And you'll find that there will be people, myself included, who will want to help you get there.
So what do you think were the supports that you received that were the most helpful or the most important?
In both of my, I've been in part of 2 campaigns where I was the candidate so far, and both of them started very small, like family members around a kitchen table and an idea of why we were doing this and really nothing else. And I needed everything. I needed volunteers. We needed people to contribute to the campaigns. We needed people who knew how to run campaigns. But that all materialized. So I think when, if you're willing to put your name forward and talk about the things that you want to see change, there are many other people out there who also want to see those things change. So, and I certainly have found, and I think many others find this too, is that the supports that you need, they're out there and they will come. So Women in Politics is a phenomenal example. It's a whole network of people who want to see women be elected, who want to support the campaigns of women, who want to donate to the campaigns of women. So I needed all those supports. Every woman that I know who has run has needed those supports, but it's why I think conversations and organizations like this are so important, is it connects potential candidates to the people who can help them be able to run effective campaigns.
So you have another campaign
coming
up, 2 years that we're going to have the election. Likely not before. So are you doing anything differently? Are you thinking about doing anything differently with this upcoming campaign?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think we're in a really unknown context right now. And so I think there may be some big rethinking of campaigning that is needed. The traditional ways of connecting with people, going to events or holding rallies or even knocking on doors, may or may not be possible. Certainly not possible right now. We'll see what happens as the next number of months unfold. So I do think it's a chance for us to rethink how we connect with people. People are still gathering. It's just in different ways and in different places. And so, yeah, it's a long way of saying I don't know exactly what a very digital, hopefully still very meaningful campaign looks like, but that's the kind of campaign I think that we need to be building. We need to give people meaningful opportunities to connect, even if the traditional ways of connecting aren't possible.
Okay, so, and I guess you're already in the planning stages, thinking about it, because as I said, we think we know exactly when it's going to happen, but not necessarily for sure, because we can always be surprised.
Exactly, yeah.
So you're gathering all of your support around you already, and all of that is happening.
Yeah, after I was nominated, I've spent a bit of time just reaching out to various people and organizations in the community, really just to check in and hear how things are going, and also to ask for any advice about how to hear from the community or the neighborhood or the organization in the event that we're in an environment where we can't meet in person. And so hearing, how people are connecting, and there's really innovative ways that people are engaging, as we all know. But getting some advice on what a campaign in this environment might look like, I've found so far really helpful. And I'm going to keep doing that as we get ready to start campaigning in a more serious way when the election gets closer.
So you haven't been successful so far.
No.
So what's keeping you going? What's keeping you going to the next campaign? What's keeping you going to reaching that pinnacle ultimately?
Well, I think for me, it again, I started by saying success is not just about winning and losing. If it was just about winning, you would only run in the most competitive moments and for the most competitive parties, and that's not the kind of democracy I want to see. I want to see lots of parties with great candidates who run really inspiring campaigns that get people engaged in politics. And as I said, the two campaigns that I've been the candidate in so far started with a handful of people. And, in the case of the leadership race, by the end, it was hundreds of people all across the province. And so seeing that happen for me is the most rewarding part of a campaign. There's a 12-year-old girl in London who's been a part of both of my campaigns so far. She is really, she's had some serious healthcare issues that her family and friends have dealt with. And so she's got things that she wants to see change in our healthcare system. And so seeing her get engaged and have an opportunity to, she's been on the leadership team of both campaigns, be able to contribute in a meaningful way, for me, that's what fuels me to keep going. So success, yes, of course, winning is good. Winning would be good, but I feel really grateful to have been able to be a part of campaigns where new people get to find their voice and get to speak up on issues they care about. That's what success looks like for me. And that's what I am striving towards in my third campaign as well.
That's great. Wonderful definitions of success, I think, for all of us. It's all about the values, right? So that's wonderful. So thank you for joining us today. That was great.
Thank you very much for doing this.